so we're going to go ahead and bring this meeting to order. Would you please take roll?
Ms. Atkins. Mr. Hendricks.
Here.
Mr. Houston.
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel. Mr. Stoffer.
Here.
Mr. Wyledge.
Here.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the April 19th, 2021 agenda?
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. See what I told you?
I know,
See
I'm
what I
glad
told
you did, so.
I
Dr.
had
Knapp?
just mentioned to Ms. Sheffel that we need to basically pull item 803, 1003, the Kraft multipurpose room floor repairs. Quite simply, we had one of the bids that we received reneged, and so we're not tabling it because we're not asking to discuss it tonight, but we'll just postpone it to a
Okay.
future meeting when we've got all the bids we need. We wanted to bring three bids forward, and it turned out the one we were going to bring forward reneged. So
Okay.
we've got to go back to the drawing board on that. So that
So
may
we're
be.
actually just pulling that line.
We're just pulling
out.
it, and we'll bring it to the meeting, hopefully more sooner than later, because we wanted it as a summer project. It's appropriate to do as when kids are not in the building. But when we're ready, when we've got what we need and what the board needs to see, we'll bring it back.
All right, sounds good. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge.
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. And we will now open the 2022-2023 school calendar hearing. Has this been duly
Yes.
advertised?
Yes, so what
It
we've,
has to be published with the
Oh.
agenda.
It was. Okay, thank you.
and I'll say a few words. This is not a real complicated agenda or calendar to explain, because it's identical to what we've been doing. It's identical to what the board has already approved for next year. Remember, this is 2 years from now, and it's identical to what we adjusted to this year. We put it out to our building administrators, asked them to meet collectively with their building representation, whether that was BLT or other groups in their building. We got feedback. There were two prominent themes that came back to us, which we understand in a year where we've had 5 snow days. One of the themes was, we love this, we love spring break. I think that we've now started something that would be very, very hard to reverse in
Yes.
future years. Good luck for anybody who wants to try that.
Mhm.
And rightfully so. I think our students and our staff work hard, and it's nice to have a spring break. But with that comes challenges about when you end the school year, and dividing days up over 3 trimesters. So there were just comments about how are we going to handle snow days in the future. So there's a little bit of a separate topic we're going to take forward, but we replied to that, to our principal, saying that one thing is, we now have in place at least the option ready to go of a late start date. So that's kind of mechanically there for us to do, and there are some days, maybe not this year, we thought about using it this year. It has to be the perfect scenario, but I think in previous years, there are days that went as full days that could have been late starts and then saved that need for a makeup day. The other thing is, we are now, I charged our principals with this year developing a plan, if you will, for remote learning snow days. And what we said, and what I said to the board, if you recall, back probably in October-ish, there were people asking, are we going to have traditional snow days? And we said, we will have them, and I think the exact phrase I used was, when we get to February and we've burned 5 snow days, we're probably going to be looking to go to remote days. And that's what happened. We got to February and we had burned 5, and we jump-started the conversation. We were ready to use remote. Never had to. So we've gotten some feedback. We said that we would go forward with, the opportunity for late starts when we could, and also we would probably say, in each year we'll do 3 snow days, and then we would transition to remote days. And the only reason I'm bringing all that up is we did get some feedback. At least one of our buildings proposed back that they think if we did a straw poll district-wide, the people would probably say, you know what, do one snow day, and then go to remote days, because people are going to prefer that over end of the year. So that doesn't have to be part of this conversation. We're gonna leave the mindset, and again, this is 2 years out, but we're gonna
Correct.
leave the mindset that we make up snow days as needed. But we'll work on, between now and even next year, a more definitive plan of what number of snow days will we have traditionally before we kick into deploying a remote snow day or remote learning day on snow days. So, and the only other thing is there was some discussion about, now that we have the spring break, when we get to the Easter weekend, some were saying they would prefer to have Monday as opposed to Friday. So we tried to get feedback, and it was split across
Yeah.
the district. It was just split, just about everywhere was talked about. And so we're defaulting to the way it is in the recommendation here, because if we did, we were open to switching that to Monday, but if we did, it would take some language changes in our classified handbook, because that's a specific date that is mentioned in there. Correct? Am I saying that right,
Yes,
Andrew?
correct.
So that was all discussed. Having said all that, I'm gonna now let Dave drive it home, but I think that's pretty much a similar calendar to this year and next year.
Very much so. Couple of differences. The winter break is a little bit shorter in this calendar. It's not a full 2 weeks, right? The terms are not balanced. First term is 60 days. Second term is 60 days, and third term is 57 days. So, if 3 days come off second trimester, which is almost always where they occur, they'd be added to the third trimester. So we'd have 60, 57, and 60 then. This does put us out the first week of June or thereabouts, depending on whether we have snow. We would still try to plan a more definitive summer school opportunity for students, and plan it for beginning on the 12th of June. And that's really it. I mean, it really does very much mimic what has happened in the past. It starts on the first available day according to the law, which is August 23rd. Cannot start before that date. We'll also be planning probably to have some transitioning to school, like we did this year and every year past, where freshmen start, sixth graders start, maybe second graders, kindergartners, that kind of thing like we did this year. We'll probably continue that kind of process as well. That's about it.
Dave, I thought of one other thing I wanted to mention, just for any staff that may be listening. There was one other recommendation that there was kind of electronic discussion about it, but it was after the fact of our discussion, and I think that I answered it correctly, and it was coming from one building that thought that there'd be a good idea to try to align the end of the first trimester with Thanksgiving week, precisely Thanksgiving week, to where we would have actually staff days on Monday and Tuesday, but no student days, so it'd be a full week off. My answer to that was the trimester answer, that really it took more days away from the second trimester, which we try to load up more days in the second trimester, and there would be no other way to recapture those days elsewhere for the second trimester.
That's correct. It would actually extend first trimester to 61 days or more, depending on how it was done. The only other discussion was looking at the February 20th professional development date, and perhaps moving that one into third term, which might even extend a little bit more that second term, make that a little more flexibility there. But really, there was not a lot of conversation about it, so we left it right where it was.
Yeah, because to your point, Dr. Knows that you come back Monday, Tuesday, then you're right on holiday for the
Yeah,
new try.
yeah.
Okay, does the board have any questions or discussion on this? Is there anyone that is online listening have any comments?
One of the comments was just loving spring break and not, they enjoyed it not being tied to Easter as far as travel goes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that spring break, it fits in with the end of the trimester, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why it's a little, about a week earlier than what
Yes.
most people do spring breaks, but that's the right thing to do. I mean, that worked out nicely, and we had a lot of good feedback about that this year.
Okay, all right, then, and hearing nothing else, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the 2022-2023 school calendar. And now we'll go on to comments and commendation and good news.
We have several. First of all, a couple of applications that we submitted for the Governor's Council for STEM have been approved. Burke Swenson and Tressa Cooper at the middle school, both at the middle school this year, and they'll be implemented in this coming fall. We'd remind you that it's been a while since we had an in-person play, and Little Mermaid will be happening soon. They're in the thick of it now, and we'd recommend that you get your tickets. And I will share this document with you so you can click the link and get your tickets. Titan Hill students raised over $11,500 for the American Heart Association, in large measure a result of hard work by the two PE teachers there, Mr. Bry and Mr. Ernst. Tremendous experience for kids. And then, you know, we completed another set of parent-teacher conferences, and this is something that may be part of our future in the way that we look at parent-teacher conferences. Scheduling conferences and doing them virtually has gone over very, very well for lots of our parents. And so that's another piece of good news for us.
Okay. And the Little Mermaid, you can buy a ticket and watch it, correct, is what I understood, that you can watch it virtually. So if you
Yes.
can't make it in, because the tickets are limited, of course, and then, but if you can't, you can go ahead and support them and watch it
Yes.
by not going to the auditorium. It won't be as good as live, but it is another option. Anyone else commendation and good news?
I just wanted to mention, of course, we've announced this, I've informed the board, I've informed the staff, but I still think publicly it's an exciting thing, but we were deemed a Council Bluffs Chamber unbelievable workplace. And the reason why I think that's so important, the way it's the human research survey that they did, it's our own staff that are determining that. There are thresholds that you have to meet. All I can do is push people to fill out the survey. We can't push them to how they fill it out.
Right.
And the good news is it's some good feedback, some pretty good feedback to go alongside of our other assessments that we're doing and the thought exchange that we're doing to ramp up for some future goal setting. So it's just worth mentioning, and it's a good feeling to know that when you ask your staff to complete a survey, that number one, enough of them do care enough to do it, and number two, that they fill it out to where it meets a threshold that causes the chamber to say that we are in fact an unbelievable workplace. So just kudos to all of our staff, and I think our students probably as well, because that's what it's all about, and that's why we come to work every day. So.
Absolutely. All right. Comments and suggestions. This is a portion of our agenda that anyone in the audience or anyone that's online can make comments to the board. So none online, and all right. Hearing none, we'll go on to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Do we have an updated personnel sheet?
We do. There were 4 additions to the agenda.
Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Stothard?
Yes.
Mr. Rylage? Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffield?
Yes. Reports.
Start with just a quick update, as I usually do, on COVID relative to our school and school functioning and us getting through yet another day of navigating this this year-long situation now. We continue to have kids in our school who have tested positive. I'm happy to say that ever since the vaccinations began, we have had very, very little issues with staff. We do have some concerning times here and there. Today alone, we had 5 kids test positive in the middle school in one of our buildings. All of our buildings except one currently have at least a positive case. So it's not something that we are no longer worrying about. We definitely are concerned. We're also watching. We stay in contact with Pottawatomie County Public Health. And from the beginning, as you know, when we brought the Return to Learn plan to the board last summer, the plan was to follow the guidance of local public health, which I often have to remind folks. People want to say, well, the governor changed statewide things, and that's true, but what the governor and the Department of Education for Iowa also did is they deferred school districts to their local departments of public health for guidance, which is exactly what we did. We took that advice, and we can continue to follow the guidance and the advice of our local public health. I think that we all continue to hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel. The county numbers did jump up quite a bit for a while there. They were describing it as concerns about the presence of the variants, the COVID variants, which also tend to be, according to the research, tend to be a little more aggressive in the younger populations, which may make some sense because we've seen a little bit of an uptick again. Nothing that looks like November, and hopefully we don't ever see that again. But, I do want to just share that one of the most trying parts about navigating COVID and being a superintendent, working for the board, and trying to do everything possible to keep our schools open, give kids an option to attend. But I've heard consistently from people with their opinions, their thoughts, often their links or their letters or their news articles, and it's all over a continuum. And the way I often describe it is we have a faction on one end of the continuum that doesn't think we do enough. They think we could do more. They think we could be more strict. They think that they can't send their children to our schools because we're not making it safe enough for them. We have a faction on the other end of the continuum that wants us to stop doing our mitigation efforts. Many of them tell me they don't believe some of the stuff I just shared with you. They may tell us that it's all a hoax, that what public health is telling us is not true. There are no variants, there are no spikes. And I always listen to people. I'm not one to get into arguments, but I just listen. But we hear all of those. And I think the vast majority of folks in the middle have said, you know what, if you're giving our children an option to be in school, we're thankful for that. And within that group, it may be some that are concerned and leaning toward this side. There may be some that think it's not necessary, but we still go through with it. And it's the conversations are, they stick with me. They can be painful, because I can go from a parent telling me how hard something like masks are for their children or their child, and I can hear the pain in their voice, and sometimes there are things said that leave a lot of guilt and worry on me. And then you can get another phone call and talk to a parent who's lost a family member, a parent whose child, they want their child to go to school, but their child is an asthmatic, and the doctor has warned how careful they need to be because of the possibility of COVID-induced asthma, and the tears in those parents' eyes, and what you hear in their voice. And it's ongoing like that. It's all over that spectrum. And I think what we just have to remind folks is that we haven't taken a political avenue on this, and I admire the board for that. I've never heard one comment from this board that is something that aligns somewhere politically on this conversation. I've heard the interest in staying consistent, and the way we have done that is we did what our governor and our Department of Education told us to do. Follow the guidance of your local Department of Public Health. That's what we've done. We've stayed consistent with that. We've continued to do that. The public may not know that while I bring a quick report like this to the board at every board meeting, I also communicate with the board once a week. And I always include the information from the week, and the board knows that if there's ever, an interest in departing from public health, that obviously that needs to be brought to my attention. I've never sensed that. I've definitely not ever recommended that. And so here we are with less than 2 months left in this school year. We're quickly approaching about a month and a half, I believe. The next board meeting we have, we'll have barely more than a month left. So things seem to have worked. We've kept schools open. We have never gone to a hybrid. We've never missed a day this year because of COVID. And I think daily we want to do the right thing, and we want to take care of kids and nurture kids. We know it's more complicated for some than others, and we know it'll be impossible, and it has been impossible to be pleasing to everybody in this conversation. But we've continued to stay consistent with following the local Department of Public Health. And as always, I'll say to the board that if at any point in time there's a charge that needs to come to me to alter that, you know that I'm listening, and you know that I would follow that charge. But not a recommendation I'm making, and so we'll continue forward.
I think that's been the main reason why we have been left open, or we have been able to open, was because we have been consistent. And I know friends and teachers and people in other school districts where they had to shut down. One, it was the lunch ladies, they wore masks all through lunch and that, and then they sat down at one table and took off their masks and ate. And so we have been lucky to keep open, and we always wondered last August if we'd be able to do that. And I think with being consistent and following the guidelines from the public health, I think that's been our greatest achievement there. So thank you for keeping that message out there, and keep school open for just a couple more months or less.
There was a question that Josh sent to me that was online, if you don't mind me
No, that's fine.
entertaining that, asking when was the last time Potawatomi County Public Health updated their guidelines, and are the guidelines posted online that we follow? Our guidelines are through communication, direct communication with public health. And to be honest with you, the most concern, excuse me, the most concerning guideline and regular talking point are the masks. We know that the other thing that masks has allowed us to do, we've kind of diminished over time the efforts to try to social distance, because it's just very, very complicated. We've tried our best in many ways by limiting capacity, just like we talked about the musical this week. But it's not perfect. But what we've been told in the guidelines is that if we have far less to worry about if we are utilizing masks. So, but anybody can call public health. It doesn't take, I don't know if they post that for others. Our conversations with public health are direct, sometimes daily, depending on the cases we have, sometimes weekly. But anybody can question public health and contact them. And I know some people have done that. Somebody called me back and said, public health said they don't require you to do anything. And we've never said they required us to do anything.
Right.
We've just said that has been the guidance that we were deferred to, and that's how we've stayed consistent.
All right. Does the board have any questions? Okay, we'll go on to 7.02, iReady mid-year data report.
While Dave's getting things ready to go here, I'll do a little bit of introduction for him. You obviously know who Dave is. But you also recall that I asked Dave in the fall, when we had a first glimpse of some academic data, to talk with you, and he did, and very effectively helped us feel pretty good as we were getting into the school year about the data that we were seeing. The mid-year review confirms that and has some things to make us feel really positive about how our schools are rebounding after being out of school for almost a complete trimester last year, and then still dealing with this pandemic. So nobody does this better than Dave, in my opinion. And when he shared this data, I thought, man, I got to have you talk to the board again. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Dave.
After the mid-year testing is finished nationally for iReady, we have a meeting with the iReady folks where they put together a set of slides that help us to see how our growth and our performance looks compared to others in the nation. Okay? When I met with you last time, it was more of a nuts and bolts about how we did compared to some standards, right? 1 year of growth, for example. And this data really does start to confirm much of what was alluded to in that prior presentation. There are two sections, one dealing with math, and I'll talk about math first, and then one dealing with English language arts, which is specifically reading comprehension. And just a reminder, the iReady testing, the diagnostic test we use both as our state-approved screener for reading comprehension and for math, and as a diagnostic measure to try to focus instruction for kids. So teachers have data to really zero in on a little better on what an individual student might need. So this first portion is about math. First question is, did students in our schools grow from fall to winter? This is a very powerful slide in my mind. First time that we had seen a slide like this from the Curriculum Associates group. It looks at growth according to kind of where you start the race. If you're a high-performing group, you're going to be on the right. If you're low-performing, you're going to be on the left. If you're high growth, you're going to be toward the top. If you're low growth, you're going to be toward the bottom. The dashed line represents what the national median percent of typical growth would be for a mid-year test. Now, what that really means is you line all the kids up, take the middle kid, and what's their growth look like, right? And typically, they would grow at about a 61% of the year's worth of growth in that time. Notice, please, that our middle school is getting great growth and about average performance. Titan Hill had more than a year's worth of growth and about average performance. And Kraft had more than a year's worth of growth and above average performance in math. This is a half year. And we're getting more than a year's worth of growth out of the group in a half year. Now, does that translate to scoring great on the ISASS, on the Iowa assessment? We don't know. In fact, I'm not going to try to be optimistic about that. Bottom line is we missed a third of the school year last year. We started way behind. But are we catching up? Are we making a difference for kids? The answer is absolutely we are. This one looks at that same data, only divides it out by grade level. So it gives you a little clearer picture, kind of what's going on. And all of our grades except third, fourth, and fifth. In fact, fourth was right at the median growth for the 50th percentile kid. All of them are above the expected growth, with those exceptions. Growth translates and performance translates into some categories for us, and iReady does a good job of helping us to see what a relative placement of that child might look like. Mid and on grade level or above is our target for everybody. The green in this chart are kids that are scoring within the grade level band already in the middle of the year. Yellow is honestly, it's pretty close. It's within one grade level below. And pink and red are the kids that we try to target intervention services toward, primarily, right? And the goal of this slide is to show that we're increasing the number of kids that are green is good, right? And decreasing the number of kids who demonstrate through this assessment whether or not they are struggling severely or not. It's tremendous growth. Now, so far, that doesn't tell you what other schools are doing, right? This one looks at our growth over a 3 years period of time. So in 18-19, where were we in the middle of the year? Last year, where were we in the middle of the year? And this year, where are we in the middle of the year? Now, the thing to remember here is that chart on the right, the bar on the right, represents kids who have missed a third of their schooling in that time. Yet we're almost performing at the same kinds of relative placements as we were last year and the year before. Our growth this year has been tremendous in that regard. Okay? This chart, I apologize, this one is a little messy. I thought about leaving it out, but really it helps you to see that the growth is really across the board. It's not like our 8th graders are knocking the socks off of things and our 4th graders are not. That all of our grade levels are showing significant differences from the fall to the winter in terms of relative placement. So it's distributed growth as well. It's tremendous growth. This one is kind of telling. This one does now compare us to other districts in the nation. There are about 3 million students that take, or 2.9 million students that take this test in the middle of the year. And that's why we had to wait to get these results until the national testing window was finished. Historically, in the winter is the first bar on the left. For nationally, the middle bar is what happened this year nationally. And please note the difference. There are a lot fewer kids scoring in the green categories and a lot more kids scoring in the red categories across the nation on this assessment. And this is 3 million students, almost 3 million students taking this assessment. Our results for our 1,950 students are the third bar. And notice that we are considerably, our growth has turned into placements that are considerably better than others in the nation. Now, what's this a result of? I think this, personally, I think this is a result of a couple of significant things. One is that we are face-to-face with the vast majority of our students. There's nothing that can compare to having a real-life teacher in front of real-life students, reacting to them, working with them individually and in groups, face-to-face. That's one thing. Another thing is the tremendous efforts that our teachers have done through this year, realizing that gaps exist and that their role is to try to help these students be successful. Right? So it's individual efforts on the part of teachers, tremendous efforts on the part of principals and teachers, coupled with them being with us face to face, is translating into better growth than other students taking this test across the nation. That was math. Now I've got the same ones for reading. This is amazing data. Our middle school growth this year, especially in 7th and 8th grade, is phenomenal growth. And we could drill into this and really see some tremendous things happening. I can't tell you how proud it makes me feel. Right. Every school above the bar, every school in the top right quadrant, which is what we want, right? That's what we want. This is by grade level. Wow. Tremendous growth. Fall to winter shift in terms of relative placement. We went from 33% in the green categories to what, 64% in the green categories. That is phenomenal. From 28% to 18% in the bottom category. Kids are being successful on this assessment. There's no question. And it's a result of the tremendous work that our teachers are doing. A year, instead of just fall to winter, what does winter to winter look like? And winter to winter looks like we've made up the gap in reading. Now, one thing that I've talked to Dr. Knost a little bit about is that, and this is confirmed in these data, that kids seem to have bounced back in reading much more quickly than they've bounced back in math. Let's face it, when you're at home and you're not in school, you're still exposed to language. You're more likely to interact with text. You're less likely to interact with computation, with mathematical thinking, with the kinds of things that we try to get after in math. So missing school has a more significant effect for kids in math than it does in reading. And this has played out here. This is our data over a 3-year period of time, winter to winter. This is our data divided out by fall and winter by grade level. And again, every single grade level is making tremendous gains in terms of placement. And this is our look compared to the national benchmarks for the 2.6 million students that took the math assessments. We did better this year in terms of, in reading comprehension. We did better this year in the middle of the year than we typically would on a normal year, even though we were missing a third of the school year. Okay. So again, tremendous growth from fall to winter. Good placements. I won't say outstanding placements because we're catching up, right? But the acceleration is definitely present in the system. Honestly, I don't know how ISASP will go. We missed a third of the school year. I worry about that. A third of the school year won't show up in terms of our growth. It'll show up in terms of the performance. I fully expect that our scores for ISASP will be lower this year than they were in the past because of a third of the school year missing for kids, right? But the flip side of it is teachers are doing a tremendous job. Principals are doing phenomenal work. And it's not just about reading and math, it's about the whole kid. It's about the extra efforts we've been trying to get after in terms of SEL, social emotional learning, sense of belonging. Being a real kid in today's environment is very different than just a year ago. So, okay, any questions?
I did like the ones in the audience, the teachers all shaking their heads all at once when you were talking about that. So,
I'm talking about them.
absolutely, they're doing a great job because, you know, this has been all weird, and teachers need to be commended for all their hard work and getting the kids the scores like that. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think, you know, when Dave is pointing out the growth piece and how really tremendous it is, I think on a normal year, we would look at these kinds of gains in growth
Oh.
and celebrate them.
Mhm.
And to consider this is relative to rebounding from missing a third of the year last year that is powerful. It is a testament to our educators. I think it's a testament to the resiliency of our kids,
Mhm.
and the support that we have from parents. But it's exciting because anybody that opens up any kind of data this year relative to how students are achieving, how they're doing, you're kind of looking at it worried that it may not be exactly what you want to see. We realize that, but very good stuff. And as I said earlier, nobody explains it better than Dave. So thank you, Dave, for.
If you want the whole thing, it's about 50 pages. No, I'm going to do that actually with Titan Hill staff on Wednesday. We're going to talk about their data a little bit deeper, so. Okay.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, we'll go on to discussion items. 8.01, 2021-2022 salary agreement with the LCEA.
So I'm actually going to pick right up with that comment we just made, that our teaching staff is just phenomenal and have really shined. I don't want to suggest it's been easy. I don't want to suggest that there's been zero frustration. I don't want to suggest that there's been days when we probably have some teachers that don't want to come to work because it's just been challenging, but they have. And I only say that to set this up because I don't mind saying I've always considered myself as an administrator. I want to be an advocate for teachers because teachers are what make the difference in the lives of children. Teachers are what help children thrive in school. And so I've always been a huge advocate for teachers. And as Andrea will tell you, when she and I sit down and talk about the budget and talk about all the paying the bills and how do we take care of our teachers, we don't get into well, maybe this, maybe that. We look at the money we have. We look at the money that's appropriate to apply to teacher salaries, and that's what we do. And that's what our teacher representation knows that too. We've worked with them this year. So I'm going to read really quick just what I have on the agenda item to kind of set this up a little more. You may recall that last year we reached a 2-year master contract agreement with the LCEA for contract years 2020-21 and 2021-22. Say that slowly. And at that time, we agreed to meet again this year to only discuss the topic of salary. So we agreed upon language for the contract last year for 2 years. So we weren't going to get back together to negotiate really language. We just had to talk about salaries. And after meeting with the LCEA chief negotiator and the LCEA president, we've reached an agreement with the LCEA regarding a 2021-22 salary package. Unfortunately, driven heavily by the challenges associated with much lower projections this year of new money, along with some remarkable increases to our insurance premiums. That's not anything that we can control. It's just a matter of fact, and it's just unfortunate the timing has to come on such a difficult year. That made it a challenge. But the agreement settled on was for a 1.6 raise for the 2021-22 contract year. The agreement was voted on and ratified by the teachers on Thursday, April 8th, 2021. I can't say enough about the representation for the teachers in our district. They are professional in their approach. They are human in their approach. They are true advocates. They love the teachers as much as all of us do. They understood the situation this year. This all happened on a couple of meetings that Andrea and I had with the two of them, and the conversation was very well. I just commend them. I cannot say enough about their advocacy for our teachers. I can't say enough about our teachers. I can't say enough about the difficulties that a lot of people can stand out and judge and not have any idea. And you know, I've often said, and I want to say this with the most sincerity that I can, in my 33 years, I often like to say that anything I expect people to do, I've done as well. And I can't say that. I've never taught in a pandemic. Never done that. And what I've seen in our teachers this year, and even the struggles of last year when we were closed down, is just remarkable. And on some days, I tell you from the bottom of my heart, it's the only thing that makes me smile, and how difficult things have been. So I just, I'm just being a little long-winded on that, because I think collectively the administration here at this table, and I'm sure I speak for the board too, of all years, we'd like to be announcing a very, very kind and nice salary increase. It's just more humble this year, and it's just the result of some things that can't be helped. But I commend the teachers and the representation for the teachers and how they handled that, accepted that, and how we came to this agreement.
Does the board have any discussion, comments? All right, thank you. We'll go on to 8.02, Curriculum Resources Purchase Agreement.
This is, Dave's gonna come back up for us here. He's sitting in. I don't think she would mind me telling you, but Kim would absolutely be here and had intended on being here and wouldn't miss something like this, because she's our passion behind our curriculum efforts. But she's ill today, so we still have a good team here to help Dave walk us through these very important resources that we'd like to propose for purchase tonight.
We have really three sections to consider tonight. A 612 Social Studies adoption. And tonight we have Sharon Crawley here, who broke her ankle.
No.
So I'd like to thank Sharon for joining us, and she's welcome. You're pipe in anytime. The work for social studies really began when the State Department adopted the new social studies standards, which was several years ago. And much of the work that we're asking you to consider tonight in terms of resource was done last year and the year before. When the pandemic hit last year, we kind of set aside some of that materials adoption analysis and all those kinds of things during the pandemic. Picked it up again this year, and Kim and the group has put together a confident package to move us forward 6/12. If you recall, the last social studies adoption that we did was a K-5 adoption of resources for social studies, and most of that was integrated kinds of curriculum material. This one is less so. It's more about some standardized curriculum from vendors. The total for social studies, $125,454.
I'd also like to add that, since you said that it was K-5, the 6 and up, we haven't had any new materials since like 2009, 2010. And so a lot of like our electives courses have no electronic components or anything to it. So a lot of it has been us scrounging to find material. So it's been really nice to be able to see updated material that's going to be useful for students to do advancing in career learning and all the C3 stuff that we're talking about. So it's been nice to look at materials for that.
Yeah. And Sharon's speaking especially around some of our elective courses, which had pretty stale curriculum. Psychology, sociology, some of the electives. We have some core curriculum materials that we did 6 years ago. The subscriptions for those materials are expiring. We had this year that we could play with that, and that expires this year. We're looking at a 6-year subscription for the renewals. And then there's a variable in here too. There's still some work to be done on an AP course in the social studies department. And so the asking tonight kind of gives a small ballpark number for them to use for some analysis for an AP course in the social studies as well. The next section deals with mathematics. And we got a lot of folks behind us tonight. Dana, would you introduce the staff for us?
Absolutely. This is Debbie Croson. She's a 4th grade teacher, currently remote. Ashley Salazar, 2nd grade teacher, also currently remote. And Susan Brewstrup, 3rd grade teacher, in person this year. And I'm Nina Marker, principal at Home.
And they are in large measure representing the lead team for math at Titan Hill. If you recall, thank you, Josh. If you recall, we did some math adoption last year around, and are doing some piloting of some materials at Craft. We implemented the illustrative math models, which is open source, but yet published and produced by Kendall Hunt. Titan Hill was a little, they were not part of that, and this is our opportunity to bring everybody on board. Titan Hill has done some work this year to examine those materials, to better understand where they are in the whole mathematics instruction process. And so the vast majority of the math piece here is looking at math in grades 2 through 5, looking at implementing illustrative mathematics as our now our K-12 approach to teaching math, right? In addition to that, we also had a STEM project that was approved in our past that looked at the Desmos calculator and some supplemental curriculum associated with Desmos. And that is primarily used right now at the 8th grade. And this also includes a renewal of that STEM subscription for Desmos as well. And Ed?
Well, I will share one thing that we were really excited about, and then allow our teachers to share anything they would like to share. The full alignment K-12 was something that really prompted us to move forward with this, not only with the common language K-12, but also the common structure of the mathematics instruction. And as we saw on the iReady data, Titan Hill being the only of the 3 buildings not using illustrative math, in math we had the lowest of the growth of the 3 buildings. Of course, we all know that the teacher in the front of the classroom makes the impact, makes the most difference, but there's something to be said for resources, common language, and a common structure that is effective for our students and that's used district-wide.
We were also just really excited about the spiraling of the curriculum and how it wraps back around. We've been writing most of the curriculum together over the summer. We are not curriculum, we've done the best we can through the years, but we were excited about the scaffolding and the spiraling of the lessons, and also the fact that it would be district-wide.
I'll add that the differentiation that's included in the program will really be helpful when we are looking for those interventions and our MTSS, making sure that we are hitting all of those learners. Like Susan said, teachers are spending a lot of time supplementing that, and this is just going to give them the materials that they need and the time to spend with students with quality material.
Debbie,
The
anything else?
only thing that I would add to that is the fact that we have been using the philosophy of CGI, cognitive guided instruction, and this program matches what we believe to be the best practice for students. And so it really fit very well with the strategies, the format that we already currently are using. It just refines it for us.
I'm really excited about having a K-12 common structure, framework underpinning what resources we have provided to staff. It's going to be great. The last piece is just a very small piece. They've been doing some work in one of the AP classes at the high school, and that's the AP Literature and Composition class. The AP group, the College Board actually redid that curricula, and we're behind. So it's time to renew that particular class at the high school, and so there's a small amount in the recommendation for the that particular course. That is the AP Literature and Composition course. So the total asking for tonight is not to exceed $177,557. Questions?
I hear no questions. Thank you so much, and thank you, the teachers, for the input also. All right, we'll go to 8.04, 404, 405, and 406 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the second read.
Yes, second read, we brought this to you for a first read last time. I did not entertain any questions over the course of the last 2 weeks. There are no changes to what we brought on first read. I think, as always, or throughout this process, that's because there's not any significant changes to anything here. It's as our board president just read, these are efforts to align, update legal references, and when we get through with this, when I kind of timed it out the other day, I was thinking through our board meetings and what I thought, because we're about to get beyond the 400 series, which is a big chunk, but it'll be sometime in the fall when we are done and have a complete, I'll call it a re-up, not really a revamp, but maybe you could say revamp, but of our policy. So anyway, this is still in the 400 series, and these are all policies focusing on employees. Again, a lot of them are replacements because of legal references, and a few added policies at the end. We'll have those we'll talk about in a minute on the next batch. Some added that don't really change what we do, but they reinforce what we do. You know, there's differing philosophies about policies. Some would prefer there not to be a lot of things in policy. I think if you talk to IASB, if you talk to our attorney, and personally, if you talk to your superintendent, I think that when we practice, we should be able to connect that practice to policy, even if it's very generic in what it says, but it just proves that we're practicing in alignment with policy. So that's what any ads did here, and that's it. That's probably what I needed to say, but we're asking for you to approve that on second read.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on those policies on the second read? All right. Go on to 8.05, 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414, policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
So picking up where I just left off, this does round out the 400 series, and what you may notice is different about this smaller group is that these are all ads, okay? But what I want to stress to you is they're ads, for instance, things like licensed employee contract release, how we release people from contracts who are licensed employees. It's not creating anything new on how we do that. It's just adding a policy that we didn't have in place. Licensed employee retirement. Again, it's what we do. It's aligned with what we do, but this is a policy. Licensed employee reduction in force. What we would do if we ever did reduction in force, but we don't have a policy stating that. Classified employee licensing and certification, same thing. Classified employee compensation, classified employee wages, and overtime compensation. And then some things about classified employee retirement, which really mimics what we already did on certified employee retirement, and professional leave. Nothing here changes. None of these policies change how we practice. In fact, they are in line with how we practice, but it creates a policy that aligns our practice with a policy that until now hasn't been there. So this is first read, of course, as always, gives the board plenty of time. If you look at these and you decide there's questions or concerns, you can bring those to me, and if we alter any suggestions, that'll come back to the board on second read.
Does anyone have any comments or discussion on these policies on the first read? So these policies were just basically IASB?
Yes, these are IASB
And then we're
policies.
putting them in our policy manual?
Yes, we are. And we did, Andrea and I both reviewed them extensively. And, you know, we weren't interested in changing practices on these policies. So, you know, as you've seen in some of the policies, there may be more to the policy where they have some italicized language or such. We didn't add any of that. There were a few things that made sense for us to not include, but of course, all legal references are updated, and it aligns with how we currently practice.
Okay. Everyone okay with these on the first read then? Okay, and if you do have any questions that come up,
Yep.
direct them to Dr. Knost, and we can get them answered, so when we get to the second read, we can get those answered.
Yep.
All right. We'll go to the second time on our agenda, comments and suggestions from the audience. This is the second time during our agenda. Anyone from the audience or anyone listening online can address the board.
I will just say that Dr. Jones was online watching and available for questions, as well as Molly Pettit, who would be the high school language arts teacher with the curriculum. So they did check in, and they offer thanks to you guys for the interest.
Okay.
And I should have stated that because I would absolutely expect that Dr. Jones would be online to listen, even though she couldn't be here with us tonight. So thank you.
Share the emoji that she shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks to Dr. Jones and thanks to Molly Pettit too, along with our other fabulous educators who are here with us tonight.
Definitely. Okay. We'll go on to action items. 10.01, 2021-2022 salary agreement with the LCEA.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the salary agreement with the LCEA as presented for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.02 curriculum resources purchase agreement.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the curriculum resource purchase agreement involving several vendors as presented. Totaling costs will not exceed $177,557.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.04, 404, 405, and 406 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the second read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion the board approve presented policies included in the 404, 405, and 406 series and all accompanying regulations and exhibits on the second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.05, 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the presented policies in the 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414 series on this first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. 10.06, 2022 to 2023 calendar approval.
Apologize that I did not include a proposed motion for that. Obviously, I proposed that the board approve the.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 school calendar.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes. Items of interest in future board meetings. The regular next board meeting will be May 3rd, 2021, starting at 6:30. Is there anything else that we need to?
No, Dave already mentioned that, just a reminder that we have musical this week. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday matinee. As you mentioned, it can be purchased to watch streaming as well. So.
I have a daughter whose favorite movie is The Little
Oh.
Mermaid. She even had her graduation party, Little Mermaid,
I
so.
could sing every song. I think how many vacations I drove my children on where that was playing in the back seat, and I just memorized. I don't know if I've ever watched it from top to bottom, to be honest with you, but I know every song.
Yeah.
And I know that Jackson is playing Sebastian, and he's going to do a phenomenal job at that. I know he is. He's so talented.
Good. Okay, anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I guess you can stay, but.